Hey guys, Marlos here. Let's talk about the rune system in PoE 2. There's a lot of concern going around recently about rune bloat. Do we have too many? We're getting over 100 new ones coming into the game. Will we have 1,000 in a year? Things like that. But I don't think it's actually a problem. Let's look at the rune system and what it actually achieves. You've got the early game runes that give resistances, life, damage. You've got the 3 elemental runes. You've got iron runes. And you have attribute runes. Now, people put forward the 200 number as the headline and say, how can you decide between all these different options? And there's a phenomenon in psychology where if you have too much choice, you can struggle to make a choice because you're considering not the upside of what you're picking, but the downside of all the things you haven't picked. But that really doesn't come into it for these runes for that reason I mentioned earlier. But if you actually break it down, a lot of these runes are gear slot specific. They could be martial weapon, or even within that, they could be quarterstaff. Unless you're playing a specific archetype, you won't even have access to that rune in the first place. It's not a consideration. And a lot of these runes are hyper-specific to certain builds. Some people say there's a problem with the rune system because you need to use resistances in endgame on some builds. However, that's not a problem with runes, that's a problem with the resistance system and that you can't get enough from other sources. Sources that are gone from PoE 2 that we had in PoE 1, such as jewels, they used to give about 10% resistance of 2 elements, so about 20% resistance. They had cluster jewels that gave resistance, and you had more resistance on the tree. So that's put increased pressure on your gearing from runes to make up for the lack of resistance. But that's not a rune problem, that's a resistance problem. And then you have the end game runes. I'm going to focus on the end game runes as the vast majority of the early game runes are not in consideration. Anyways, a lot of them are just bad. Let's look at some of them now. You use these ones, Desert Storm, Glacial, and Iron, but things like Rebirth Rune, Inspiration Rune, Vision Rune. Let's look at a new one, Archaic Rune of Retaliation. Tower Shields, 8% increase attack speed if you blocked recently. You have to use a shield, you have to use a tower shield. You need to have block chance, you need to be near enemies, you need to have blocked recently. If you're any other kind of character, a caster, using a quarterstaff, using a bow, this rune doesn't enter your mind whatsoever. With control, quarterstaffs, 25% increased mobilization build up. You have to use quarterstaffs and you need to use a build which has mobilization as one of its key features because it's not something you'd put a random 25% investment into. Archaic Rune of Animosity, gain 2 druidic prowess when you heavy stun a rare unique enemy. That means you need to use talismans, you need to benefit from druidic prowess, and you need to have an ability to heavy stun the enemy. So that's essentially bear druid builds. That's the sort of archetype they're trying to lean into with that rune. Let's look at a gear slot. For example, body armor. How many body armor runes do we have there? 50% reduced effect of curses on you. This is quite powerful. Of course, you do have more generic ones such as maximum life, which are good. Life regen per second. But a lot of these you wouldn't consider on most builds. 12% increased speed of recoup effects. Most people never consider this whatsoever. Most people don't use regroup in their build. That's why I don't think the rune system is a problem, because it enables a lot of archetypes that would otherwise be dead on arrival by giving them an extra power boost from this system, which you can freely slot into gear, and you don't have to worry about trying to craft these modifiers onto gear. And if you add these mods to the general mod pool, you make crafting these items exceedingly difficult, and you're still limited to 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes, so what are you giving up on your gear to get these modifiers in? The runes are pure upside in my opinion. I do like the crafting bench system from PoE 1 for early game gearing issues, but that's a whole different situation. These end game runes are when you've got good gear, 6 out of 6 affixes on gear, and these are purely a bonus on top, not for fixing early game problems, because you can make some debate over whether they are good at doing that. You should have a bench, but that's a topic for another video. That's also in part caused by the issue of resistances on your character in general. The general rune system is good. It allows modifiers that you wouldn't be able to otherwise get. It allows you to get them easily, and it allows GGG to control the price of these modifiers by how rare the runes are. Hope this video made sense, guys. That's why I don't think there's a problem with the rune system. I do believe some runes need to be rebalanced and made more interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Peace.